So you're running out of closet space. The good news? You don't need to stop shopping. You just need to start selling with The RealReal. The RealReal is the world's largest and most trusted resource for authenticated luxury resale. Whether it's that mini bag that can't even fit your phone, or those boots you never fully broke in, The RealReal handles everything from photography and copywriting to shipping and pricing. So you can just sit back, get paid, and make room for things that actually feel like you. And with 10,000 plus new arrivals every single day from top designers like Prada, Celine, Louis Vuitton, and Loewe, all for up to 90% off retail, you're bound to find something perfectly on brand to fill that extra closet space with. Plus, right now, you can get an extra $100 to shop when you sell for the first time. Make room for what feels like you. Go to therealreal.com to start selling and get your extra $100 to keep shopping at therealreal.com. That's therealreal.com. Terms apply.
Hello and welcome to Haway The Podcast. It's Martin here, and we've got a news roundup for you today. I'm embracing my inner John Craven and bringing you all of the latest news from the world of Sunderland AFC. And I've got a very good co-host with me today, somebody who's got a great opinion on everything and anything going on around the football club. It's Andrew. Hello, mate.
Hello, mate. I'm desperately trying to think of some of John Craven's colleagues, and I can't. He's the one and only in my mind.
It's funny, isn't it? I actually Googled it to see if there's anybody really memorable I hadn't remembered. And, you know, there's people apparently like the Christian Guru Murphy, Helen Skelton, Jake Humphries apparently has hosted News Round.
Oh.
All of those are way after my time of watching News Round. It's John Craven, the be-all and end-all as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to be linked with Jake Humphries. Bless him.
And you can issue some motivational quotes, some rallying cries, some LinkedIn. You know, with Christian Speakman departed the club, we're going to miss out on some LinkedIn talk, aren't we? So maybe we can bring that via Jake Humphries.
Is this my opportunity to get myself a job, a high-profile job at the club? I tell you what, if people are looking to me for motivation, we are in trouble, I think. Yeah, well, something's gone wrong.
We'll see what happens, won't we? Now, we're going to kick off this news roundup today, Andrew, with this story about Brian Brobbey that was in The Athletic. Now, I think when we signed him during the summer, there was talk, wasn't there, about this issue that he'd had in Holland, and, you know, he'd been held to extortion and all this sort of stuff. But all of the details have kind of emerged. I think, we maybe had a look into it in the summer, but we didn't really know the extent of things. But this story that's in The Athletic now, would advise anybody, or recommend rather, anybody who hasn't read it to dig it out. But it all started in December 2022 when he was approached. He was at this music event, and he was approached by this person who he kind of knew to look at to see, growing up with him to some extent, but he didn't really know him as a person, allegedly. And this guy told him that Moroccan criminals in Utrecht were looking for him. And he kind of brushed it off and thought, just people trying to, he was kind of used to random approaches from people saying different sorts of things. A month later, fireworks went through his mother-in-law's house. In March, an explosive was thrown at his car, and the police originally thought it was Feyenoord fans because it was a Ajax Feyenoord game around the same time, but that was sort of quickly ruled out. In the April, his sister-in-law's car was set on fire. Then his friend kind of got involved and tried to sort it out from him. He'd set up a meeting with this fella who'd originally approached him. He ended up being shot, got rushed to emergency, had surgery that, ultimately saved his life. And then demands for money came from Brobbey. Now, there's no hint of anything sort of being wrong on Brobbey's side, no hint of wrongdoing on Brobbey's side. But all of this going on over the past, 3 years for Brian Brobbey, what an awful lot to deal with, first of all. And he actually played some of his best football during this time as well, and whether that was a release or whatever it was. But absolutely remarkable story.
It is, Martin. You've summed it up really well, because it was wild at points. It was like reading the script to a film or something. It was just utterly bizarre. And we do need to remember, when watching footballers, they could have anything happening in their personal lives that we are completely oblivious to and they're having to deal with. Now, I doubt many of them are going through stories that are as extreme as that. But it did make me think, wow, we've got to be a little bit kinder on players, because they are targets. They are vulnerable to dangerous people. These are young lads with money. They're bound to have negative influences sniffing around them and trying to capitalize. But yeah, just a horrible story. And like you, I'd had a bit of an idea that he'd been involved in an unpleasant situation, but reading through the finer details there were quite, just left me a little bit shook up, really. Not pleasant for him or his family at all.
No, it was interesting as well that apparently Brobbey comes from a place where, it's almost frowned upon to get police involved in things, and I think that's kind of common for a lot of people, isn't it? You sort problems out, you don't go running to authorities for help and all that sort of stuff. So Brobbey had kept it quiet. He hadn't gone to the police. The club at Ajax, a few people knew about it, but not many people knew about it. He didn't make it public. He didn't ask for help. And actually, the people who did know about it from Ajax had moved on as well after a period of time. So last season at Ajax, he's going through this poor spell of form. He's got this hanging over him, and nobody else knows about it. So I think when you read a lot of the feedback about Brobbey from Ajax fans and Dutch football fans over the summer, some of them were quite critical of his play, the form he was in last season, all that sort of stuff. But as you say, that sort of stuff must weigh, it must weigh heavily on your mind. It must put you off, concentrate or giving everything mentally and physically to the game. And it was only actually in the summer, just before we signed him, that details of this started to emerge. So he was going through all of this without any knowledge, any real support. The lad who originally approached him at this music festival, who ended up trying to get money out of him, he was arrested and sentenced, I think, in September 2024 for 9 years. And he received another 10 years for the attempted manslaughter of Brobbey's friend when he got shot. But it just sounds like something out of a bloody gangster movie, doesn't it? Not something out of what you'd usually associate with a professional footballer's life.
No, you're dead right. And of course, he's bound to feel pressure and anxiety, particularly when family members are being dragged into it. I think he said his mother-in-law was targeted, his sister-in-law was targeted. So you've not only got your fears for your own safety, but you're distressed on behalf of loved ones. And we don't know, do we, how we would react in a similar situation. It was quite surprising to me that he was a little bit anxious, a little bit cautious about letting the club know the extent of the story. And maybe that's something else we need to be aware of. You hear it a lot, don't you? Players hide personal issues because they're scared it'll lead to them being dropped or sold, or it's going to somehow derail their football career. So they keep these things to themselves. But just an unimaginable situation. How I would react, I have no idea at all. So not pleasant for him, not pleasant for his family. And yeah, there is a part of this whole story that was almost unbelievable, just in the sense of this type of thing doesn't happen on a regular basis. It was really extreme, and it seems as if this character has a very unpleasant past, obviously, and was a real unpleasant man, and not somebody you want in your life in any way.
And it kind of makes it all the more remarkable that Brobbey's come over to a different country, settled in, got himself fit after a couple of months, got himself in the team, and he's been putting in the performances that he has been doing so far this season. It's a great testament to his mental character to be able to come and do that. And once a Hollywood blockbuster's made of the whole episode, he'll be more well renowned than he is now. But he's become one of my favourite players. If you just look at it on the football field, and it's all credit to him that he's managed to do that this season.
Exactly. Like you, I think he's one of my favourite players. He's doing a great job for the team. And to watch him at the moment, you wouldn't think that he was just coming through the other side of quite a really unpleasant scenario. It's always going to be tough moving to another country and establishing yourself in a different culture and in a different footballing culture. But he's taken to it well. You have to assume he's now at a point in his life where he is a bit more relaxed and he's not looking over his shoulder. But it speaks a lot to Sunderland as well. Now, obviously, they haven't dealt with this particular scenario where a player's been the victim of a horrible story. But we've had players before who have got the talent, but for whatever reason, it's not working for them. We're quite good, aren't we, at jumping in and kind of sneaking in ahead of other clubs and putting those things to one side and giving players an environment where they feel able to feel loved, feel welcome, and feel able to flourish. So all the credit in the world goes to Brobbey for the way he appears to have handled this. But it's not a surprise that Sunderland are becoming this club where people can re-energise their careers and move on from past issues.
And if he can, he's well on track to recapturing the form that he had with Ajax in his earlier career. But there's a bloody good player there. And the story in The Athletic also made reference to the fact that Manchester United tried to sign him a couple of seasons ago, and that hadn't gone through. But brilliant story in The Athletic if you dig it out. If you've got Apple News, actually, all of the Athletic content is available through Apple News. So go and have a look for that. Dig it out if you don't subscribe to The Athletic, but it is certainly worthwhile having a look at.
Definitely, it was a good read. You sent me the link, and I didn't enjoy it as such, but it was an intriguing article. And I've just thought there, of course, this film that you and I have decided we're going to go into partnership on and produce, we'll just get it filmed at the new studios on the banks of the Weir. Brobbey can do his training and then just jump in the car and hop down to the studios and do an afternoon's work at the studios. So hey, it's gonna be a massive success, I'm sure.
Excellent. And also, hopefully, a massive success is looming in the FA Cup. Now, obviously, we beat Oxford on Sunday rather, and the FA Cup draw was made on Monday. Now, Port Vale or Bristol City, Andrew, I think it's a great draw for us in terms of being able to progress to the next round of the Cup. But this game got postponed at the weekend. It's not due to take place until the 4th of March. And I'm not sure the reasons behind why it's taken such a long time to play that game. But the next round's on the 8th of March, which means supporters, the club, the FA, everybody else has only 4 or 5 days to actually get prepared, get travel arrangements sorted out. Absolutely ridiculous.
It is. It's staggering. And I know the world is different now and you don't need fans to be queuing up outside grounds overnight to get tickets. But even still, it's the other things you need to sort. And let's not forget, Bristol from the northeast is not an easy place to get to. You don't want to be making those preparations last minute. You don't want to be paying prices that are over the odds because you're doing it at such short notice. So difficult for the club to prepare because they're not going to have much time to look at the footage and analyse their opponents because they don't know who it's going to be. But you're right, difficult for the fans. I'm assuming that it's a simple case of we've been through this ourselves, Martin, but the Championship, League One, League Two, when the schedule gets quite hectic, you've got Saturday games, midweek games, and it's just a cycle. So I'm assuming they've struggled to find a slot in the calendar where both teams are available. And in terms of the teams we're drawn against, I was really pleased to avoid any of the big guns. But there is this rather odd little side issue to it all. And it does make the logistics difficult. And we see this all the time. Often the people who are hit hardest by it are the supporters who want to go there.
Well, there's absolutely no chance of getting some early bird discounts on your train tickets or anything like that, is there, if we don't know where we're bloody going to until 3 or 4 days before the game takes place. But it's one to look forward to, and yeah, I think it's a good draw. I think when you look at the draw overall, it was actually a poor draw, wasn't it? There was a lack of Premier League clubs getting drawn against each other. Obviously, the only one was Man City and our friends, the visitors from up the road. But, you know, there's it's going to be bloody hard going if we get to the quarterfinals, because you're going to have pretty much a full round of top flight teams in pretty much. But we will cross that very good bridge if and when we get to it. Now, Dennis Cirkin played against Oxford, and I thought Dennis Cirkin played brilliantly against Oxford. I thought he had a really good game. And he's been talking about his contract situation. Obviously, he's out of contract still in the summer. There's been nothing agreed, and Cirkin said he's still in the same position. He's quite relaxed about it. He's got the rest of the season to play out, and we'll just see how it goes. He's been talking about the competition with Ronaldo as well. And he said, he admitted there was some natural frustration, which of course is going to be if you're fully fit, as he has been for the last couple of months. He's been playing well when he's got the chance, but he's not going to displace Ronaldo this season, certainly, I don't think, if both of them are fully fit. But Cirkin's been saying he's been watching them very closely and thinks he's a terrific player. And it's obviously up to the manager, or it's up to Cirkin rather, to give the manager a difficult decision to make in terms of selection. But he says, Ronaldo, he's a terrific player to have in front of me, only pushes me more and more. I think the only thing I won't pick up from him is his shorts and sleeveless T-shirts in training. And it's an endearing thing about Ronaldo, isn't it? Wherever the weather seems to be, he's always in his sleeveless vest and his shorts, and he seems to like the cold.
He does. He's obviously gearing up for a post-football career as a postie, because he does. He likes the shorts. And just before coming on to speak to you, Martin, somebody sent me a link of a clip with Ronaldo. I think it was the Liverpool game, where he noticed that the lucky mascot he was walking out onto the pitch with was a bit cold. Obviously, it was a night game. So he took off his warm-up top and said, there you go, you wear that. I mean, what a lovely gesture. That kid's going to remember that forever.
Oh,
because,
brilliant.
you know, and at the end, he said, listen, you keep that top. You don't. I think the players must hand those tops back to a member of staff normally, and they take them away and get them ready for the next game. But Ronaldo was like, no, this is yours now. You keep it. So he's some boy like Ronaldo. He's coming across. He's coming across really well. But Cirkin can't afford to be all doughy-eyed about that. Cirkin's got to try and get ahead of him in the team. And it's this type of thing is fine as long as both parties seem to be on the same page, and they are. I believe Lebris has said the same type of thing, that, yeah, we know that we need to sit down and have a conversation, but all parties agree that we'd rather wait a little bit for it to happen. So it's not as if one side is stalling or looking a little bit unsure. We've obviously had an initial conversation and decided that for whatever reason, it's not going to happen now. Some players like things to be sorted months in advance. Some players like to put it to the back of their mind whilst they concentrate on the season and revisit it in the summer. There's certainly no suggestion that Cirkin his performances are being impacted, because, yeah, like you, I thought he was really good against Oxford. There must be something different with Cirkin in the club than there was with Neil in the club, because it felt on occasions if Neil wasn't wasn't being considered for minutes, whereas Cirkin is. Cirkin's being completely taken as a fully fledged member of the squad. So if the club are happy, if the players happy for the time being, don't think there's any reason for us to panic. Nobody seems to be negatively impacted by this at the moment.
And I think for Dennis Cirkin as well, he's had his injury problems, of course, hasn't he, over the time he's been at the club. But for him to almost be given the opportunity to get fully fit, to ease himself back into first-team football, there's no pressure on him to come back in and play every week and perform every week. He's got somebody like Ronaldo who he can learn from in training and watch and all that sort of stuff. But it's not as if Ronaldo was 23. Who knows how long we'll have Ronaldo playing for, but, you probably think he'd play next season, and then after that, who knows what the situation is. So to have Cirkin there and Ronaldo in front of him, he's got a pathway back into the first team. And it's actually, I've talked about this before, in terms of the club being fair to players, in terms of not expecting them to play every week in the Premier League after they've only ever played in the Championship or League One. There's such a huge jump. And I think by integrating them into the Premier League slowly, getting them up to speed in terms of what's expected in the Premier League, the chances are in a season's time, we'll end up with a far better player than we would have done if we just expected them to play week in, week out from the off. So I just really hope Cirkin signs a new contract, because again, I really like him as a player. He's come up through the leagues with us. He's another one like Luke O'Nien, who's been there and has played a huge part in getting the club back into the Premier League. And I think he's got tremendous potential. So yeah, fingers crossed he signs a new contract. Now, we will move on to transfers, Andrew. There's been a few stories emerge, and I'll just mention the comments from Dennis Cirkin. They were from an article that Phil Smith, a good friend of the pod, Phil Smith, had done in the Sunderland Echo. And if you want to go and dig that out, there's an awful lot more there from Dennis Cirkin. But yeah, Phil had caught up with Dennis and got a lot of good insight out of him. So that is on the Sunderland Echo website. In terms of transfers, obviously you get some stories emerging after the window is shut about things that nearly happened in January, don't you? And there was a couple of interesting ones. I think you can kind of join some of the dots up with these two. So the first one is a Hungarian right back from Galatasaray, Roland Salai. I'm going to choose to pronounce his name as. He's played 64 games for Galatasaray, scored 7 goals and got 7 assists. Brentford and Liverpool have also been strongly linked with him. And apparently we made serious attempts to sign him during the January window. Now, I'm going to put 2 and 2 together, and whether I'm on top Colombo form or not, here is another matter. But I reckon this was linked to Geertruida going. So I think this was the move that we were rumoured to be working on. And if that had come off, then Geertruida would have gone to Liverpool. It's, by all accounts, we're going to go back in from in the summer. There's a long-standing or relatively long-standing interest in this player. So he's one to watch out for, and maybe we'll go back in for him during the summer. Who knows? The other one was a lad called Victor Munoz from Osasuna, a left winger, right-footed left winger. Now, apparently we'd had a £20 million offer turned down. He's made 25 appearances this season. AC Milan were also interested. This is the sort of level that we're at now. It's not Accrington also interested, or Lincoln, who was Trey Hume, wasn't it? Lincoln was the other option Trey Hume had on the table when he signed for Sunderland. But AC Milan have also been credited with an interest. So he's a right-footed left winger that we tried to get into the club in January. Real Madrid had a buyback clause on his contract, and they've decided not to activate that. So potentially during the summer, he becomes available. Again, if you're putting 2 and 2 together, we signed Nelson Angulo on deadline day, and we obviously wanted to strengthen those wide positions. I think this was one that we tried, obviously didn't get. And Angulo is potentially another one that had on the list. Is obviously going to have a number of players on the list, the profile of the like. And yeah, Munoz apparently, Andrew, was somebody who we tried to get through the door.
It would have made sense just purely on the fact of, I'll see if I get this the right way around. I think you said he was mainly a left winger who was right-footed. Or was he a left-footed right winger? I can't remember now.
A right-footed left winger, yeah.
A right-footed left winger. Well, we do quite like that style of player. And from what I can gather, he has the potential to play either as a winger or as a forward. We like that adaptability in players. And people perhaps see a transfer link, and if it doesn't happen, we'll just go, oh, well, that was obviously a load of rubbish. But there will be players the club have a serious interest in, but then for whatever reason it doesn't progress. And that should be seen as a good thing that we've got contingencies. We don't want the club putting their eggs all in one basket because there's any number of reasons why a deal might fall through. So if this, the player playing in Turkey, if that was genuine, and if this lad who was playing in Spain was genuine, that suggests to me that the club is still being thoughtful and covering themselves, being prepared for all eventualities. It might happen again in the summer. It might be something we look at. From what I remember, we have been linked with a couple of real high potential signings from Spain of late. I'm sure there was a lad we were linked with who was at Real Madrid.
Yeah.
There were stories in the summer, and there was a kid at Barcelona. So Spain could very well be another market that we've looked at, and we think we can potentially get hold of a couple of names before they go stratospheric. Sunderland obviously like this, don't they? They like to nip in and be bold, and whereas some clubs might be a little bit cautious and want to see how a player develops, Sunderland seem quite happy to do it. So, yeah, just because they didn't happen in January, it doesn't mean that there wasn't substance to it, and we could well go back in for them. You make a really good point, Martin, about Truda. We don't know where his future lies. You wouldn't be surprised if we didn't turn his loan into a permanent thing. And now that Gasolfi's in charge and running the show from a recruitment point of view, I think we can expect Sunderland to be looking in the European market, and these two lads won't be the only names we're linked with in the next few months.
No, that's right. I think you're spot on in terms of the club being willing to maybe go a year earlier than other clubs would go. I think that was mentioned with Siddiqui, certainly during the summer, where people were saying he actually needs another season in Belgium and then go to the Premier League. And we've got a season early, given that experience, and we are reaping the rewards. So that will obviously continue as an approach, I suspect. Another young lad who is allegedly due for a trial at the academy is an Icelandic midfielder called Thorbaldur Smari Johnson. I hope I've got that absolutely spot on, but I very much doubt it. But again, casting the net far and wide and looking to bring in players at all levels, not just ready for first team, but players who can come into the younger teams and develop with the club. One player who's been linked away, and I think we talked about this in the Q&A pod the other day with Anton, but Wilson Isidor was linked with a move away during January. Everton, Paris FC, and Galatasaray were credited with a link with him. It's dead easy to read stuff into it, isn't it? When you look at the performance he put in on Saturday, his body language wasn't great. He wasn't really involved in the game. A story came out on Monday that Wilson Isidor is really unhappy. He wants to leave the club. He's not happy with his role in the team. And it's really easy to put two and two together, isn't it? But as we talked about the other day, it wouldn't be a surprise if Wilson left the club. But again, it wouldn't be a surprise if he's all smiles on Sunday and he goes and gets a goal and everything's wonderful again. So it's one just to watch, I think, isn't it?
It is, and you can bet over the summer whether there's any truth to it or not. Isidor will be a very easy link to make. If you've got 10 minutes before your deadline and you need to fill a few column inches, you're just going to go, oh yeah, Isidor's not getting regular games at Sunderland. There's been potential interest from elsewhere. We'll just throw a dart at the dartboard, see which name we can link him with, and there you go. There's an article. So we don't know what's going to happen for him. He's got a young family though, Martin. I mean, it was last season, or was it early this? It was early this season, I think, where he had that week where he scored a goal in the Premier League. He had another newborn, and he had his birthday. So he's again like we've said with Brobbey, there's going to be other things in his life that are going to be influencing his mood,
Oh,
and whether
100%.
thinking whether Sunderland's the right place for him to be at. We don't want players who are happy to just sit on the bench and not go anywhere with their career. So if he is frustrated, as long as he's challenging it in the right way and not stirring things up behind the scenes, that's not a problem for me. I want players to want to play. And I do get that feeling that Isidor will be a name that we're talking about a lot. Whether it's the right time for all parties for him to move on in the summer, we'll see. But I wish him well if that's the case. He's done an important job for us, and we're seeing this time and time again. Just because a player's popular and likes the area doesn't mean it's going to be forever anymore.
No, that's right. And I think it works both ways as well, doesn't it? If a player wants to leave and develop the career, then that's all well and good. We've shown during the course of this season that we're very happy to move players on should we need to. So, you've got to balance that up, and it works both ways. And if I was a betting man, I would put money on Wilson Isidor being somewhere else certainly come the transfer deadline at the end of August. But we will see. We will take a short break there, and we'll be back after a couple of ads to talk about the players that we have out on loan at the moment. We'll be back soon.
Close your eyes, exhale, feel your body relax, and let go of whatever you're carrying today.
Well, I'm letting go of the worry that I wouldn't get my new contacts in time for this class. I got them delivered free from 1-800-CONTACTS. Oh my gosh, they're so fast.
And breathe.
Oh, sorry. I almost couldn't breathe when I saw the discount they gave me on my first order. Oh, sorry. Namaste.
Visit 1-800-CONTACTS.com today to save on your first order.
1-800-CONTACTS.
Where's your playlist taking you? Down the highway? To the mountains? Or just into daydream mode while you're stuck in traffic? With over 4,000 hotels worldwide, Best Western is there to help you make the most of your getaway, wherever that is. Because the only thing better than a great playlist is a great trip. Life's the trip. Make the most of it at Best Western. Book direct and save at bestwestern.com.
Welcome back to Haway The Podcast. Now, we've got a number of players out on loan, and I think when you go through the list, Andrew, there's not many who you envisage coming back and actually forcing the way into the first team, but it's still, I think I still enjoy keeping an eye on how they're doing, what's going on with them. So Simon Dingru was one that was probably a little bit of a shock that he left on loan in January, so soon after signing. He's gone to Monaco, scored 2 on his debut as Monaco beat Nantes 3-1. I don't know if you saw the goals. There were 2 tap-ins within 3 or 4 minutes of each other, so they were very simple goals. They weren't spectacular, but he was in the right place at the right time, finished them, and he started on Tuesday night in the Champions League against who was PSG, the players.
But yeah, it was a all French game, wasn't it?
So I think they were 2-0 up and got beat 3-2 in the end. And Dembele got taken off in the first half. If we're talking about summer signings, it's important to keep an eye on these players as well. We say with our tongue firmly in cheek, but Simon Dingru might put a good word in with Dembele at some point. But yeah, Simon Dingru seems to have got off to a good start in Monaco, which it's important because he's obviously a player that the club have very quickly decided we're not sure about him. We don't think he's cut out for Sunderland and or the Premier League. They've agreed a fee, an optional fee for the summer, which obviously Sunderland are happy to accept. So it's in our interest for Dingru to go over to Monaco, set the world alight, and in Monaco are dying to sign him in the summer. So he's got off to a very good start. Alan Brown's been a consistent feature for Middlesbrough. I think they've been doing exceptionally well, although they got turned over at Coventry, as we did last season as well, but he has been playing regularly and getting a lot of plaudits. Arthur Masuaku was another player who we signed in the summer and left in January. He came on the second half sub for Lens as they beat Paris 5-0, and that put them to the top of the table. So he's swapped a season with Sunderland on the bench. Well, not even on the bench on a lot of occasions, was he? But he's swapped dodging around for us to being part of a team that's potentially going to win the league in France. Dan Neil, of course, we talked about him earlier. He went to Ipswich and he made his first start for Ipswich as they got beat by Phil Parkinson's Wrexham in the FA Cup. So not a very nice reunion for Dan Neil with Phil Parkinson. Nazari Rusyn's another player who's out on loan. He scored against Legia Warsaw, but he got beat by Pogoń Szczecin or something like that at the weekend. So again, like Rusyn's a funny one, isn't he? Because he arrived with quite a weight of expectation because we waited so long for a striker. Never really did it. He went out on loan last season, didn't pull up any trees, and he's had a bit of a mixed spell at his new club as well. But we'll see how that one progresses. Niall Huggins was a player who was incredibly highly rated when we signed him from Leeds all those years ago. But he's another like Dennis Cirkin to some extent who has really struggled with injury. He went to Wycombe and he played at the weekend in a defeat at Reading. And he was also an unused sub for them against Exeter. And then Shuterov came on for Exeter as a sub, and Exeter got a last-minute equaliser. Huggins has only played 13 games for Wycombe. He's scored 1 goal. And again, I think injuries have played a real part in stagnating his career because when he's fit, he looked a tremendous player.
He did. He had some real skill about him, real pace. Seemed like a nice kid as well. So it is a shame for him that injuries keep coming back to bite him. Just from a purely human level, I want to see all of these lads do well. I mean, it's good for the club if some of them succeed and we sell them and maybe get a bit of money back in for them. But just on a human level, there's been very few players in recent years that you want to see the back of and you've got no time for. Lads have come to the club, they've worked hard and things maybe haven't worked out for them, so you need to move on. But yeah, I'm always pleased to see these people do well elsewhere. Adingra, I hadn't realised they ended up losing to PSG. I think they had a brilliant start, and I think the keeper then saved a penalty. So yeah. PSG have done well to come back. But I like this idea that you've joked there that Dembele's maybe had a word with him and said, "Oh, what's it like up on Weir side?" Because when I was looking at that lad who's at Galatasaray, who's a Hungary international, I was thinking, I wonder if him and Callum Styles have had a little conversation about the Academy of Light and decent places to eat on the seafront. And there's all these conversations about Sunderland happening in far-flung corners of the globe. Whether Callum Styles would be reporting on Sunderland favourably or not, I don't know. But yeah, good luck to this lot. I know a lad who supports Middlesbrough. Alan Brown is really popular there. I mean, they don't like admitting that they've had to come to Sunderland to borrow one of our players, and that if it wasn't for him, I've tried to make the point, if it wasn't for borrowing a lad off us, you'd be mid-table. That didn't go down well.
Truth hurts sometimes, doesn't it?
Well, yeah. I think I saw Alan Brown won some sort of Player of the Month award. I don't know if that was just for Middlesbrough or for the Championship in general, but he seems to be loving it there and producing good football. And again, a character who, whilst he didn't play for Sunderland loads, I think he was pretty pivotal behind the scenes. He was a senior figure. So, good luck to them. And I tell you what, you've done well to condense it down to a few minutes because it's quite a long list at the moment of players who are out on loan.
It is. I'm only halfway through. So Timothy Pembele is out at Le Havre. He's played a few games. He came on as sub at the weekend to help Le Havre get a 2-1 win. Treagon Sui had a spell in Scotland earlier in the season, went to Shrewsbury. He came on at half-time in their 3-1 win at Swindon and got a lot of praise for his performance in that game. Adji Elise went to Portsmouth on loan and he pulled up with another injury, didn't he? And he's been sent back to Sunderland, season over. The poor lad can't catch a break in terms of getting knocks and pulls and muscle strains, can he? It's easy to forget he started the season in our first team, playing tremendously well last season, wasn't he? And, in a parallel universe, he could have been the centre half at Wembley, getting through to the Premier League, winning the playoff final, stepping up this season because he's got all the attributes to be a bloody good player, but his body just keeps letting him down, doesn't it?
It does. Very similar to the Huggins situation.
Yeah.
But both seem like nice kids. Both seem like really, really good players with the potential to have excellent careers. But just you've said it yourself, they just can't catch a break. As soon as they seem to be up and running again, their body fails them, and that's it. I'll use the word tragic. It's a bit tragic to see because they've done nothing to deserve this. They just seem to be very unfortunate individuals who, as you say, had things been different, could be regulars for very good teams.
Now, with the potential exception of Treog and Siri, I don't see any of those players who we've gone through who are out on loan currently coming back and really establishing themselves in our first team. But two that could, Matty Young at Salford and Zach Johnson at York. Now, Matty Young's an obvious one, isn't he? Because he's gone to Salford again for the second consecutive season. He's played an awful lot of football for them this season, a bit more than he did last season. He still played 20-odd games for them last season. Produced a good display at Man City in the FA Cup, apparently. Made a few good saves. He's been a good, consistent player for them this season. The club obviously have very high hopes for Matty Young as a goalkeeper. He's almost following in the footsteps of Jordan Pickford, isn't he, Andrew, to get that experience in the lower leagues. And even though we've signed another young goalkeeper, we seem to have a number of keepers sort of bubbling under the first team surface that have potential. Matty Young's the headline maker out of those at the moment. And it's going to be interesting to see what the club actually see as his future come the summer, whether they bring him back into the fold, he's competing for the sub-keeper place, or whether he gets a championship loan potentially, but he's certainly one for the future, isn't he?
He is, and I think that's a fair comparison with Jordan Pickford because the club clearly had a long-term plan for him. To see him build up and come up through the levels and give him these opportunities, he probably wouldn't be getting many minutes if he was still at Sunderland, which might hamper his development. I think it's really pleasing to see the way we are looking after Young, and it kind of brings me back to the Hungarian lad and the Spanish forward. Sunderland will move quickly when they think it's right, but they show incredible patience in other scenarios. And as football fans, there's a tendency to want everything now. And if the result doesn't go our way on Saturday, just think, right, that's it. The club's gone to pot. We're a shambles. So it takes courage and real authority to look at the longer term picture with players who we might bring in, or if somebody leaves or we can't get our other target, we'll go for somebody else. And it takes real belief in Matty Young to be handling them the way they are and giving him this opportunity. And in a couple of years' time, he could well become our number one. But that won't just have been an overnight thing. It'll be because of years of steady progress and real thought has gone into his prospects. And he seems to be doing really well there. Salford got an absolute beating at Man City in the Cup this year, where it was a bit more respectable this time around. Yeah. So that alone suggests that there's a team they're coming on, and it's potentially a good environment to be in. And we like to see players out on loan do well for themselves and maybe get themselves fixed up elsewhere. But this is a nice little story just to be bubbling under in the background, and I'm excited to see where he's going to go with his career.
No, it is. It's a nice one to be bubbling under. Look, we've got a lot of good young players coming through the ranks, haven't we? One that people might have either forgotten about or kind of cast to one side is Zach Johnson. And it's probably because Zach Johnson made his debut for us age 16. So it seems if he's been around for quite a while without actually having stepped up and got regular first team minutes at any point. And it could end up he's been a victim of Sunderland progressing at the wrong time for him. If we'd been in League One now, he's probably playing pretty much every week. But Zach Johnson's still only 21, and he went out on loan to Dundalk, I think, last season in the League of Ireland. He had a spell at Notts County, and he's down at York City this season, and he's playing tremendously well. He got his first goal for the club, I think, at the weekend. But I was really interested in his manager's comments about him. And a chap called Stuart Maynard's a manager down at York. And he said, Zach Johnson's going from strength to strength, and he's going to be a top player. He's going to play in the Championship at minimum if he keeps going the way he is with his attributes, and he's got a chance to go right to the top. And this one's going to be interesting, whether the club just go, look, you go off and get your career going elsewhere, figure out a move, or they offer him a contract and get him a better or a higher quality loan next season and see if he can step up to League One or the Championship next season. Because as a young defender coming through, he's got all the attributes when you look at him. He's got everything about him to succeed as a player at whatever level that is. It's open to debate, but his attitude seems to be absolutely spot on in terms of going out, getting loans, training really hard, looking after himself, being dedicated to his profession. And he's one I've got a sneaky feeling. I think the vast majority of people would say he'll probably leave on a free transfer in the summer. But I've got a sneaky feeling that we might give him another year and see how he progresses, because with the regular football he's been getting, he's obviously catching people's eyes and catching attention, and he's getting some good praise from his manager. And it's probably one that we'll look back on and say Martin was talking absolute crap in that podcast he did in February. But I wouldn't be surprised if we gave him a bit of a chance.
Well, those comments were pleasing to read, and yeah, I think the phrase that stood out to me was it was something along the lines of he's the ultimate pro.
Yeah.
So that's always going to give you a chance of making it in football. It's nice to see that we're turning out good lads as well as talented lads. I don't know where his future lies, but he's trying as hard as he can to make a go of things. He's taking these opportunities and backing himself and giving himself the biggest opportunity to succeed. So all the credit in the world to him for that. One of the comments that interested me was that sometimes if he does make a slip, it would get in his head, and that's something he's working on, because that used to tally with what I saw in a player as him, a really competent, strong defender. But obviously things like that over time are where you're going to work on. You don't just come out of the academy and be fully formed, fully fledged. Little things like that do need work, and if York are giving him the environment to do that, he could very well come back to Sunderland and be ready for a step. Lebris obviously doesn't think he's a complete write-off, because Lebris is giving him a couple of appearances. I think he played a Preston in the cup last season. I think he's had a bit of a sniff on the bench. And listen, York at the moment, that's the place to be, because York are in with a chance of promotion. Their rugby league team had a really good season last season and are now in the Super League for the first time. So the LNER Stadium's obviously buzzing at the moment. It's a good place to be. And if Johnson does go to York, can I just ask that the club is a bit of a nice one for pre-season? Maybe as part of the deal, agree to a pre-season trip to York. I've not been down to York to watch Sunderland play for ages, and it's a cracking day out. So if Johnson is to move on, that might cushion the blow if we get a little trip down to York.
It certainly would. No, York, I've always had a soft spot for York. I think it was because Dennis Smith and Viv Busby and John McPhail and Malcolm Crosby and Roger Jones and Marco, of course, had very strong links with York, didn't they, when I first started watching Sunderland play. Now, Kevin Kilbane, Andrew, he did a piece looking back on his time at Sunderland. It was actually, I thought it was a really interesting and honest piece that he'd done, because he ultimately put, I wouldn't necessarily say his spell at the club was a failure. I think he had ups and downs. He had some good spells of form, he had some poor spells of form. But he's really accepted responsibility for the form that he showed at Sunderland, really accepted responsibility for some poor performances when he arrived, and that was a reason why things didn't probably work out the way that he had expected them to. But he said he was really surprised at the intensity around the club, around the region, around the city, around the fans, the other players. But he said it really set him up for the rest of his career. And it's a funny one with Kilbane, isn't it? Because if you look at it on face value, he's the type of player who Sunderland fans normally love. Works hard, doesn't shirk stuff, he gets stuck in. He's not necessarily the most talented, flamboyant player, but he could score goals, he get tackles in. It just didn't work out for him, did it?
No, it didn't, and it was one at the time that I felt was a little bit unusual. I feel as if certain quarters were a bit too quick to get on his back. And when that happens, one or two other people follow when the noise gets a bit louder. And I wonder if you were to ask some of them people, Haway, why are you actually giving him stick? What is it about him that means he's singled out? Particularly during the relegation season, I think he was a regular in the team then. But I think there were other players who were underperforming and were coasting almost, and yet they seemed to get a free ride. So I was always perplexed by him. He wasn't the perfect player, but you can see from his career thereafter that he was clearly a top level standard. And like a lot of these things, I mean, I tell you what, Martin, it's been a busy old week. There's been all sorts to read about Sunderland. There's lots of things happening. But his comments were very, as you say, honest. He's quite self-reflective. He's obviously that type of character, and you like to see that. I feel as if he's maybe being a little bit too harsh on himself, because he's almost taken the blame for everything on his own shoulders. And I'm not sure that's how I would have seen it. But some of his points are just worth remembering. We all know what Sunderland's like as a club and a culture and the expectation levels, because we've lived it and we've been part of it. But we will just need to remember from time to time that young lads are going to come to Sunderland and maybe aren't as aware of that and need to take a bit of time to come to terms with it. And we have to remember to be fair and just give them that chance to settle, because from those comments, it does impact a player. It can impact their performance. And we all want the same thing ultimately. We all want these players to turn up here and love it and be able to thrive. So another little article, interesting to read and just get a bit more background into what the lad was thinking.
I suspect the reason for some people was the fact that Kevin Kilbane was not Alan Johnson. But, we will look. Okay, it's funny because I remember him going through a spell where he's actually playing on the right wing. I remember scoring a great goal against Derby. He was in a really good spell of form, and him and Graham Lasso got sent off for a bit of a scrap in front of the East Stand in the game against Chelsea. And again, he kind of seemed to just get in a bit of form, and something would go amiss, whether suspension or injury or what have you, and you could never really get firing on all cylinders. But no, I think I agree with you. I think he's probably taken a lot of responsibility, where a lot of it's rightly so, but maybe he's taken responsibility for a couple of things that weren't quite of his making. We will take another short break there, and we'll be back after a couple of ads to talk about Gus Poyet and a couple of other bits and pieces of news from around the club. We will see you soon.
My day kicks off with a refreshing Celsius energy drink, then straight to the gym. Pre-K pickup, back home to meal prep. Time for my fire station shift. One more Celsius, gotta keep the lights on. When the 3-alarm hits, I'm ready. Celsius. Live, fit, go. Grab a cold, refreshing Celsius at your local retailer or locate now at Celsius.com.
This episode is brought to you by Peloton. Break through the busiest time of year with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. With real-time guidance and endless ways to move, you can personalize your workouts and train with confidence, helping you reach your goals in less time. Let yourself run, lift, sculpt, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Welcome back to Haway The Podcast for our news update, our news roundup today. And we talk about Kevin Kilbane doing an article reflecting on his time at Sunderland before the break. And Gus Poyet has also been reflecting on his sacking in a long article, which, again, is worth digging out if you can find it. The interesting thing with this, Andrew, was he talked about that summer transfer window in the season before he got sacked. And he was saying, he had Marcus Alonso desperate to sign for the club. Key was wanting to sign for the club. Fabio Barini, all been on loan, all been outstanding. And Poyet was saying, at Sunderland at the time, it was, I think, Congredon had just come in at some point during that window, hadn't he? Or during that year. And he was trying to stamp his own authority on things and try to look at different players and bring different players in. Poyet was saying, look, I want Marcus Alonso, I want Key, I want Fabio Barini. Get me them. I just want those three first. And obviously none of them came. And again, reflecting on that, Poyet said, he didn't do a good enough job of convincing the club that those were the players he needed. Those were the players he wanted. And he goes on to talk about the fact that we started the season, it was an away game at West Brom, I think it was 2-2. Lee Catmull scored a very, very rare goal in the top flight. But we didn't have a right back. And this has been a problem all pre-season, talking about the need for a right back as well. And after the game, apparently he was going to do the press interviews after the game, and the Sunderland press officer got them beside the media person and said, don't mention the right back. Whatever you do, don't mention the right back situation. And he said it was just symptomatic of the way that the club was protecting itself from inaction during that transfer window. But when you had a player like Marcus Alonso, who obviously has gone on to do things at a much higher level than we've been operating at over the past decade or so, it just goes to show the world of difference between the way the club's operating now and the way the club was operating, 12, 13 years ago.
Well, yeah, there was nothing in there that we didn't suspect anyway.
No.
Nobody's jaw was hitting the deck thinking, Sunderland were in absolute shambles behind the scenes, were they? Well, I never picked up on that at the time. But it is interesting for Poyet to come out and categorically state it. Poyet, I think, has done a good pod with Roker Report before. He is quite happy to speak, and that's good to get that. I am right in thinking that, aren't I? Poyet has been on.
Poyet's done a few with us, and most recently before the Newcastle game in December, he did a great one with Gav about the Derby wins and the stories and the stuff that was going on before each of those games and how each of those games panned out. Yeah,
well, there you go. We've given people plenty of homework with different articles to dig out. They might want to dig that out. Poyet is quite open and candid about his time. And you're right, the contrast to how the club is now is vast. I almost wish I didn't know about Alonso being desperate to come back here, because that just the knowledge of that just makes
ridiculous,
it worse.
Isn't it?
I
You've
know.
got a quality player who's proven to be able to perform at the Premier League, who's got a number of years left ahead of him, and now you're all right, mate. You go and find something else.
Well, exactly, yeah. Go and win trophies elsewhere. There's a good lad.
Who did we get? Who got Desena or somebody, didn't we, instead?
I think it probably was Desena, and yeah, I don't want to think about it. But Barini was a long drawn out saga that summer about whether we were going to make it into a permanent deal, and I felt this at the time. I didn't have a problem with the idea of a sporting director or a technical director, whatever the job title was. In theory, you could even see back then why that would have worked. But the way it was implemented was just so cack-handed. Yeah. It was just, the whole club were an absolute mess of tangled thinking, and Poyet wasn't the only one who came in and felt as if the goalposts were shifted in terms of recruitment and who was responsible for what. I actually think it's good that a manager doesn't rule everything, because when a manager leaves, if he's brought in all of the players for his style, you've got a whole raft of faces you've got to move out, and you end up with this mix and match squad, which hasn't really been thought about. But with Lebris now, he came in with his eyes wide open as to what the structure was. He was fully on board with it, and he understands his role.
Yeah.
But Haway, I think Dick Advocat was the same. There was probably others around that time. They were just given a sporting director, and it doesn't seem as if anybody had a full conversation about who needs what and who was going to look after what. It was just it was a shambles. It was a shambles.
It was, and it's difficult, isn't it? Because you had the situation where Sam Allardyce came into the club, and he was definitely the manager. He was bringing in his players, through his preferred agents, no doubt, but he was bringing in his players, and that really worked for a short period of time. But then somebody else comes in, and the players aren't what he wants. The players aren't suitable. We suffered from it for years, didn't we? Having this whole mishmash of a squad with different styles, different players, people want to do different things. And especially when you got somebody like Poyet, who's got such a different and distinct way of playing football, you're never going to be able to build a squad to do that if you've got a sporting director signing players, unless the two of them are completely on the same page. And it's it was a bit of a mess, wasn't it? But yeah, when you look back and go, Marcus Alonso could, I really think, and again, reading the stuff from Poyet, Marcus Alonso was apparently desperate to come to the club, and that would have been a brilliant signing. I think Key would have come to the club. He was at Swansea that we had him on loan from, wasn't he? And he would have surely signed. Barini, I don't think, would have signed. He wanted to go and prove himself at Liverpool, try to win his place at Liverpool. We obviously got him a year later, didn't we? But the two of those players could have made a bit of a difference for Poyet. And again, it's that consistency, isn't it? Keeping the momentum going from that season could have led to something better. But anyway, it's in the long and distant past. But yes, it's a good article to dig out if you want some extra insight into that period of time at Sunderland Association Football Club. A few other little bits just to cross off, Andrew, before we wrap up for today. I thought it was interesting that the referee situation over the last couple of weeks has been much talked about. Now, whether we want to go into the whole VAR situation and referees being unable to make any sort of decision whatsoever without VAR, we can debate that till the cows come home. But Chris Kavanagh was the referee that we had against Liverpool last midweek. He also refereed the Aston Villa Newcastle game, and I don't really pay much attention to what Keith Hackett tends to say about referees and decisions, but Keith Hackett said it was the worst referee display he's ever seen, which I thought was quite a scathing comment, but it obviously grabs a few headlines and it's grabbed some interest and coverage from us today. But I think Chris Kavanagh would not have been too happy with Regis Lebris, because Lebris had made public that Kavanagh had said at half-time, I think I got that one wrong. And people have said, well, what about VAR, all that sort of stuff. But I think that's one of those situations where if the referee makes a call on the field, VAR aren't going to overturn it either way, because there wasn't enough evidence either way to say it's right or wrong. So it would have gone with the call, and I think the referee just had thought in the moment, actually, I got that one wrong. He obviously said so to Lebris. Now, whether that was to placate him in the moment or whatever, I don't know. Lebris has made that public in his press conference, and I don't think it would have been without, I don't think it would have been with any intention to do anything untoward, but he's obviously made that public. The next day, Kavanagh goes out to this FA Cup game, makes a complete schmozzle of it, and he's been dropped from this weekend's Premier League fixtures, which isn't very surprising.
No, and I don't know if dropping referees is the right way to handle a situation. I don't know if he's got a game elsewhere in the Football League instead, but there's something a bit, I don't know, there's something a bit disrespectful about that. Oh, well, you've mucked up, so we'll dump you on a championship club and they can make do. I don't know.
And we've suffered from it for years, haven't we, where you've got a championship game or a League One game even, and the referee who's made an almighty cock up in the Premier League gets to your game, and you go, well, we don't want him.
Yeah, I don't think it's very supportive. And listen, yeah, he might not be best pleased with Regis Lebris making public that conversation. I'll tell you in fact, I'll make it a flying fact. I'll tell you for a flying fact. Referees won't like people like Keith Hackett coming out and slating them, because it's like, well, Haway, you, if anybody, should know what the situation is like and what the pressure is like. So you going out there and getting your mug in the press and giving a few sound bites is not going to help anybody. So Keith Hackett can keep his trap shut for all our care. It's really difficult. I mean, that Oxford game showed to me the vagrancies of football, because, of course, Sunderland fans didn't think the referee was too bad against Oxford, whereas Oxford fans are like, oh, it was never a penalty. Lancashire shouldn't have been pulled up for a foul on 09 when he was one-on-one and could have gone through. You're never going to get a uniform opinion on referees. They do an extremely difficult job. They do have off days. They don't help themselves. I don't know if all of this carry on around it is helpful to anybody. My only problem with Kavanagh in the Villa Newcastle game was he didn't see to it that Villa beat them, which is a disgrace. If he was truly sorry about not giving Sunderland a penalty in midweek, that would have been the perfect way to have settled that score. So I'm critical of referees, particularly at the time. I see everything through a Sunderland slant, but it's not good for the game. These types of situations where referees are being hung out to dry. VAR is a whole separate conversation, and I think that needs to be tightened up. I think we all want things to be better. Craig Pawson's now being given the game against Fulham, the Sunderland match at the weekend. I feel as if he's another referee I've been unhappy with in the past. I don't know if he's always had brilliant games at the stadium, but again, is that me being overly harsh? I don't know. The VAR's an interesting one. Against Fulham, Martin, the VAR's a lad called Tony Harrington, it's interesting because he's northeast based, and I'm sure he's done work with the Durham FA and done work with Sunderland based referees before. I actually used to think he was a Sunderland fan. Apparently he's not. Apparently he grew up supporting Hartlepool and he lived a little bit further south. But for some reason, he's a name. I remember him coming up through the ranks, and I don't know where I got that from, where I thought he was a lads fan. But hopefully there is some sort of feeling for us, and he does his magic in it's Stockley Park at the weekend. Bad referees are fine as long as it works out for us, I think. That's the main take from all of this.
I think the biggest issue I've got with it, and it's actually something that we saw with Craig Pawson a couple of seasons ago when he'd made a mistake in the Premier League. He dropped down to referee our game at Ewood Park against Blackburn, and he made some decision, or didn't make some decision. I think that led to Blackburn scoring a goal against us. And that was very much because he was, this is my view, in the moment he was kind of going, I'll leave that because VAR might pick it up if it's, oh shit, we haven't got VAR. We've got to go on. And referees are so scared of making a decision in case they look daft on VAR. You talk about Keith Hackett. It's all well and good Keith Hackett criticising referees with every bloody video angle and camera angle that's available. When he was refereeing, you were lucky if you had one rickety camera up on the clock stand every now and again, weren't you? So, there wasn't the scrutiny that the referees get these days when he was refereeing.
Exactly. It's that thing about people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, and it is a bit much when somebody who should be in your corner and have an idea of the difficulties, when they're even shouting up, it's a bit like, Oh, wait, give us a break.
That's right.
And the Blackburn game, I hadn't realised that was Pawson, but if it's the one I'm thinking of, we were denied a penalty.
And then Blackburn went up and scored.
Yeah. And then in the second half, this wasn't necessarily the referee's fault, but I'm sure
Probably
they're...
wasn't.
Yeah, go on. We'll I hope he's not listening to this prior to the match and we've set him against us. I think their second goal was offside and the liner didn't pick up on it either.
Yes.
So we came away from that a little disgruntled.
Yeah. No, that all sounds about right. A couple of little bits to finish us off, Andrew. Season ticket renewals. I think it was announced after the Liverpool game that automatic renewals would not be happening. That's because Sunderland are changing their ticketing system over to a company called SeatGeek. There will be a window in which to renew season tickets. I believe that's going live fairly soon, next few days or early next week, apparently. I think the club are waiting to get confirmation of where away fans are going to be next season before they can actually release season tickets for renewal. But just keep an eye on safc.com for that renewal information because there is a waiting list, apparently. So if you don't renew your season ticket, then it will get released to people who are on that waiting list, but I think there'll be plenty of time to do so. But yeah, keep an eye out on the club website for information about renewals over the next week or so. And the other news that broke in the last couple of days, and this was talked about a few weeks ago, wasn't it, with the sheepfolds development, and there was some controversy, I guess, with the location of where some housing was that would potentially block the potential development of the South Stand if the club wanted to extend it at any point. Now, there seems to have been some agreement has been reached between the club and the council. I think the residential scope or scale has been reduced a little bit. The commercial land has been changed, so it's going to be commercial land next to the Stadium Light or nearer to the Stadium Light, but there's more space available now if and when the club want to extend the South Stand. And it would be nice to think that would happen at some point. It would be quite fitting that the Roker End is extended rather than the Roker End at Roker Park being reduced, wouldn't it? It would be quite a fitting full circle to come. But it would be brilliant to see that stand extended to its full potential glory, given that is now really our home end, isn't it?
It would be. It would look spectacular, and of course, people are putting two and two together and seeing that the Roker End is the one part of the stand where the steel hasn't been cleaned up. I think a lot of it got jet washed, and a lot of the rust is received a bit of treatment. So the fact that hasn't got round to the Roker End yet is making a couple of people think, oh, maybe is this closer to happening than we realise. I've got to admit I was conflicted when this all kicked off a few months ago. I've said before, I actually work for the council. I love the club dearly, but I also love this city and I'm proud of where I'm from. So I always feel a bit of conflict when the club and the city get into any sort of dispute or anything like that. Probably sounds a bit soft, I know, but I don't like that. But I do feel as if it was all a mountain out of a molehill at the time. I honestly do. My job for the council, I have a little bit of knowledge about planning applications and the process. And particularly for large schemes like this, they're only ever at this stage outline proposals, and they're almost put out there as a way to attract comments and change. And I don't think there was ever any doubt that the club and council were going to go to serious war over this. I think the council would have always wanted Sunderland's input and be made aware of what they want and whether this buffer zone and whether this area where houses had been indicated on an outline proposal. That's all it ever was. None of this had been signed off or had gone a long way down the line. It was all just theory. And it's now been agreed that the residential part of the development's going to be further away from the ground, which allows the club to extend and not impinge on residents. Obviously, if you've got people living right next to the ground, you're then going to start getting complaints about concerts and match day traffic and all of this. So it makes sense to move the residential away. It was always going to happen in my mind. I wasn't too concerned about that. Where it's interesting for Sunderland now, though, that we've had a bit more clarity, is I don't know if this is purely the club keeping that option available for down the line, or if now we're going to see something push forward and if things are going to start picking up pace. I don't know. One thing that's really important to us is next season, is it PSR? I've forgotten what it's called now, but aren't the rules changing and match day revenue is going to have a bigger impact?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. My understanding is, whilst we have big crowds, the average spend on a match day per person is relatively low at the stadium. So we need to improve that. And it might be that we need to increase corporate capacity as much as fans in the regular seats. We might need to be getting more revenue from that side of things. Certainly for concerts, we need more corporate and posh areas because that's where the big money is. I mean, it's multiple hundreds of pounds for tickets for take that in the posh sections over the summer. So the club will have a mind on it. We've seen with the way they build the squad that they don't leave any stone unturned. They'll be looking at things. How close it is, I don't know. At least from what we understand as a civil engineering project, it would be relatively easy to do because the stadium was future-proofed when it was built. And if we are to get more seats, I think the sad fact is some of them are going to be earmarked for tourists. We're going to have to get used to the fact that we all want a ground jam-packed full of passionate supporters creating the atmosphere, and that's one of the reasons why the Premier League is so popular. But if the club want to make money, they need people who come in for one game and go to the club shop and go big and buy every item in the club shop. I buy my shirts at the start of the season. I don't buy another shirt then. The club aren't getting any extra money from me.
That's exactly right, isn't it?
But if a seat has a new fan in there every other week and they do go into the club shop and get a load of gear, that's all money in the coffers. And that would be something we have to manage and make sure that it doesn't dilute the atmosphere. So there's lots to think about there, and it's exciting, and we all want the Stadium of Light to be the biggest and the best, but whether it's going to happen just yet, time will tell.
You wouldn't be surprised with the way that Kira Louis-Dreyfus and the board have kind of approached this season in the Premier League and the ambition that they've shown. You wouldn't be surprised if it happened sooner rather than later, would you?
No. And it'll be properly thought out if it is to happen. Somebody won't have just had a brainwave and gone, let's crack on, let's get that built. It'll be properly costed and planned. If it is the Roker End to be extended, though, I don't know how that does impact concerts and other events, because the stage is always at that end of the ground and you might end up with a load more empty spaces. I don't know. So maybe this is all a distraction and it's actually going to be the East Stand we look to do. I don't know. If we do extend the ground, though, I really hope we are able to include more safe standing, because whilst my circumstances at the moment mean I'm not in the safe standing, that is somewhere where I'd want to go back. And I think that does add to the atmosphere, the standing section. So hopefully we can accommodate that.
It does, yeah. Lots to look forward to potentially. Well, that was a very quick wrap-up of all of the news coming from Sunderland at the start of this week. We will be back tomorrow as we start to build up to the Fulham game on Sunday. And of course, there'll be a ton of content on rokerreport.sbnation.com for you as well. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you tomorrow.